Well, yes, I was influenced by most everyone I heard on piano. Uh, like I said before, I thought anytime I heard a piano, everyone knew that except me.
Hmm.
Everyone who played the piano probably
Right.
could play that except me. So I went behind everyone.
Uh-huh.
But when I heard Professor Longhair, that was so off the beaten path. So I wanted to go that way for a while. I don't know how long, but I wanted to definitely go that way. It was like a shock to me to hear that, and it was so joyous, and he took liberties that others weren't taking. However, there was a man when I was 12 years old. His name was Ernest Penn, and he came through my life and enlarged the piano and whatever room I was in and whatever world I was thinking of. He was, by the time he came back to my neighborhood to live with his old aunt, he had been an outcast wherever he had been playing. I don't know what he had did to deserve that, but he was no longer the musician among musicians where he used to hang. And he was a banjo player, but he was in an era whereas if you played a string instrument, you played everything with a string on it. So he was a banjo player who played bass, violin, viola, cello, and piano, or anything with a string. And he no longer had a banjo, he no longer had an instrument. But he moved across the street and he heard the piano going in my house one day. And when I came outside, he called me and said, and told me he was a great banjo player and he was one of the greatest ever lived. And he could play everything with a string on it. And of course, I asked him to come in and play. And he sat down and began to play the piano in a way I had never heard it being played before. I could not get over how wonderful this was. And I would look at him and to think that all this music was coming out of this man. And he played stride and butterfly. And before that, I had been hearing things on the radio, those things, and all those nice things that was the call of the day. But this guy was doing. That was a shock to hear that. And then he would play things like all that kind of stuff going on. So, of course, I was going to latch on to him. And again, he was an outcast, but a very happy guy. And he just was celebrating as if he was celebrating something every moment. And I would ask him to slow all of this down, and he was patient enough to slow and all those things down. And he put tenths in my life. And those are called tenths because you stretch your hand from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Of course, he played. And with all of the butterfly and what's going on up here, all those things, he just enlarged and enriched my life so much. It was such a joy to have him around. And he didn't have a banjo, but Uncle Andrew of my family had left an old banjo that was decayed, and it was just a neck. And this old man took a Regal beer tray that they used to serve beer on and put a back on that and went to the drugstore and bought some banjo strings, which you could buy at a drugstore at that time, and played the banjo. And I would say that Professor Longhair is my most important influence as far as people recording. Aside from that, there were old members of my family like Cousin Emmanuel who only played when he was drunk, and he'd play Stagger. play that and he'd sing Stagger Lee. And the next time he was drunk, he'd play the same thing and he'd say, How Long Blues. And the next time it'd be another blues, but it was the same thing over and over again. And there was, my cousin Dolores had a boyfriend who played a certain kind of junker blues. So to put him and Penn together comes out. So that's Dolores' boyfriend who used to play the and Penn's tenths. And those kind of combinations, you build a whole life on them after a while. Junker blues was the kind of thing that most people of that era played, that kind of thing. Toots Washington was a giant at it. Dolores' boyfriend, he only played that one piece in G, but he played it so well till every time you saw him, you'd ask him to play it again. Yes, junker blues was very important.
Would you play a little bit of Tipitina?
Oh, the Tipitina itself? Well. As far as I'm concerned, had inventions like Bach did. In fact, his inventions were, one was further from the other one than Bach was ever further from his other. Bach is always quite obvious that this is a natural elaboration or a natural extrapolation from where Bach was last year.
Right.
And Professor Long had that. It wasn't quite as obvious, but the most obvious thing was, how could it be that far away from that, as opposed to, of course, that's where it should be by now. It really took some interesting turns. He had things like he used to play a lot of rumbles. That's kind of a rumba bass, and then he had, and in the midst of all those kind of things, that's far removed from that other stuff. And to be on the way and wound up here. It's not a natural evolution, but this guy had all of that beauty in him. known as LaDonnie Mobley. Thank you, Lord, for this very special man. And thank you for letting me be around to see one as great as he. Thank you, Lord, 'twas in your plan I trust. He was sent here for few of us. So now that he's gone his way, what can I say? I remember Toots, Fess, and me, oh, and the pianist three. Oh, what fun we had, how his presence filled the air everywhere. Thank you, Lord, 'twas in your plan I trust. He was sent here for few of us. So now that he's on his way and gone his way, what can I say?